On the last Crowdcast, we were talking about empathy expanding beyond empathy for people and into empathy or connection with, wildlife and potentially trees. Stephen, do you think it's plausible that, growing up across the world and being less sort of localized could expand your sort of cross-species empathy?
That's an interesting question. And I don't, that's questions about culture and perspective. And that's interesting. And I don't know if I have the answer to that. But for example, when you go birding, like you're just watching bird behavior, if you've ever done any primatology or any animal work, you're sitting on your butt and you're just watching animal behavior for hours and hours and hours. And in the beginning, because you don't speak the language, and if you've ever observed, I spent a bunch of time with Patricia Wright in Madagascar observing lemurs. And, in the beginning, it's a bunch of monkeys in the trees. And after 2 days of it, the social structure of the tribe, who's the families are and who's friends and who's trying to cuckold who. And the details start showing. And then those details, when you start bridging the gap. So I think not only, obviously, the economics and being exposed to different strata, anytime you get multi-perspectival thinking, use the formal term, it produces more empathy. But exposure to nature early on opens up your perceptual system to take in the details of nature, right? When you went birding, they didn't have to tell you what you were looking at. You knew what you were looking at because you had been exposed to those details over time. That's when we talk about ecological awareness or nature relatedness or cross-species empathy, all those terms are semi-synonymous at this point. It's really about cognitive biases and information processing in the brain, and what information do you decide is important and what information is unimportant. When I plopped down in the rainforest for the first time and was observing primates, familial structures weren't important. They were not, my life was not going to depend on whether or not this teenage boy got a mate or not, right? But once I started watching, primate soap operas for a couple hours, now suddenly I really care and I'm noticing more details, right? Curiosity isn't just, an interest. It doesn't just expand attention. It opens up perception, and we take in different and more information. And so the multicultural stuff is probably great because it tells you to notice more things, because different cultures care about different things. So you notice, you have a wider scope to detail, but it's really, I think to me, it's the early exposure to nature and how it feeds curiosity and how it feeds perception that is that loop. I often feel, I often feel like conservation and a lot of the environmental issues, if I got to take somebody to the backcountry for a couple of weeks, the problems can go away because suddenly they're in the world, the same world as I'm in. They're seeing the nature and they're understanding the cool stuff about how ecosystems work and how one thing feeds another, and how that human beings are part of that and not external to it. That's how I think of it. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I was just going to add. So Stephen's example is brilliant because, I can lie in bed in the morning in East Africa, and not get out of bed and know what's going on outside my tent just by the calls of the birds, and they seem like familiar friends. It's a language. It really is a language. And if you spend enough time outdoors, you start. Your brain starts rewiring as if you can sort of speak Spanish or some foreign language, and you can start seeing that. So but the key to that is not just exposure to nature, but it's almost searching in nature. You have to, you can't just go for a walk. I mean, go for a walk, it'll help you in lots of ways, but it has to have a walk with a slight intention, search for a mushroom or look for a specific thing or try to find water. Or, anything like that kind of trains your brain to make the connections. Otherwise, you're passive as opposed to being an active. It's like, just to use one of Stephen's sort of, passively relax yourself with a beer in front of the television, or actively relax yourself, by going for a walk or getting a massage or something like that. It's that active searching in nature that tunes your brain to really understand a new language. That's why millions of people go through Yellowstone National Park, and when they come out of it, they're the same as they went in. that's the problem that we still have. We still see nature as outside and something beyond ourselves, as opposed to understanding that we are part of it. And anytime you can find a way to connect yourself as part of it, like Stephen did, sitting in a forest in Madagascar watching lemurs, he becomes part of the troop in some way. That just changes and rewires his brain to see nature as part of ourselves, and thus see the connections, and the ultimate connection comes back to us. And to take, and sort of, look, my worry is not that, life disappears. Life on Earth is not going to disappear, certainly not because of us. It just won't. It could disappear because of an asteroid, but it's not going to really disappear because of us. What could disappear is us and our civilization. That is very fragile.
If what you've heard on Flow Research Collective Radio has been helpful, please consider doing us a solid and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to this. Reviews help us connect to a wider audience so we can get these peak performance principles out to more people.